we discuss the practices that engage, motivate, develop, retain, and attract people to businesses. We'll give you principles and tools based on real-world stories to leverage listening and storytelling to become a better leader and management professional. Leadership Story Talks is produced by Narrative, a company that focuses on personal storytelling for business.
Welcome to Leadership Story Talks. In this podcast, Julienne, Ryan, and I, Jerome DeRoy, discuss ways in which we can create more engagement in our lives, especially at work. Today, there are more people who identify as disengaged at work than there are who say they feel engaged. And we come from Narrative, which is a company that focuses on engaging businesses and their audiences through the power of listening and storytelling, employing a 7-step method to do so. Now, there are many people out there who work to increase engagement in their lives and in turn have taught others to do so. And we've had a lot of those people on this podcast. And as we enter this new year, 2023, we thought that today, Julienne and I would come together to discuss some of the top trends that we see coming down the pike for this year and moving forward beyond that. So first of all, I really want to welcome everyone to the show and say Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Jules. Happy New Year to our listeners.
Thank you. It's great. And as the expression goes, we're beginning again for the next years of podcasts.
Yeah. So Jules, I thought I would start with you today because you were part of an article from the website bestofhr.com, which we'll make sure to link to in the show notes so that our listeners can read it in detail. But it was about the top trends. And so I wonder for you, what has emerged for 2023 from what you're seeing, and then of course we can discuss.
Well, when I started to do some homework about what I wanted to mention, there was about the economy, there was about still figuring out the hybrid work situation. And what I realized when it came down to what I wanted to say, it's still the most important thing people can be concentrating on is communications and listening and building engagement in their group, no matter what is playing out in their work environments. And it actually becomes even more important to do it right and consistently when there's uncertainty in the market. So there's a lot of noise that can really grab our attention, but that is a call to action when you're leading a group of how you keep your people focused and really working to their best abilities.
And just how you keep people, period, right? I think that's a big, as we kind of enter into what may or may not be a recession, the big R word that's been thrown around, but sometimes it's like, oh no, it'll be fine after all. But you're right, it's just completely uncertain. But that trend is still true, whether we're in good times or bad times. Retention is still, that's the real R word to me. That causes still issues. Is how do we keep our people? And I think from my perspective, and looking at what we do in storytelling, to me, the importance at the beginning of a year like this one, where we've talked about this in another episode, this VUCA world, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. How do we, in the face of that, create a story that's going to hold everyone together, unify them, and sort of rally people together to keep going and not ignore all the changes and the uncertainty, but integrate that into your story and see how you can actually move forward. It feels to me like the story is more important than ever, because without the story, all that noise that you were talking about, that takes over, right? So the ability to come up with a story that transcends the noise is going to be essential.
And I think at the heart of the gift of this using story, whether it's in however form it plays out in your work, whether it's a metaphor and how you embed it in the conversation, is seeing people, hearing them, and acknowledging and figuring out where the gift of their talents or things that might be hiding in plain sight in a work opportunity or in a teamwork opportunity. When we get to these situations of a little more belt tightening and a little more anxiety, creativity really matters. And if we are closing our hearing to what's happening in the room, we lose an opportunity to really build on some important opportunities.
Mm. This aspect of creativity and how do we bring people together around this. That reminds me, over the holidays, I had family. I was with family,
Mhm.
and then we had a little party 2 days after Christmas with neighbors, of my mom that lives in Florida. And I hadn't seen these people in a long time, because over the last few years with COVID, everyone was kind of staying at home. And so this was the first year really where we got to see other people. And so I met some people who, young people in their 20s, that were just kind of starting out in the workforce. And they were explaining to me how when their first year of work was 2019. And this was a couple. And so their first year, they were working in an office, and then suddenly the pandemic hits in 2020, and they're told to work from home. And then in 2021, they were told they had a choice, that they could work from home or come back to the office, but that it was okay to stay from home. So they decided to uproot their lives and move they live in France. So they moved from Paris to the south of France, typical,
Nice.
what you've seen in the movies. Exactly.
That's nice.
So even if you know nothing
There
about
are worse
France,
choices to make.
that's
Okay.
right. I guarantee you've seen it, because it's Aix-en-Provence, which is like,
Oh,
Provence, and
okay.
it's like this beautiful idyllic thing. And they're in their 20s. And I was asking them, well, don't you miss Paris and kind of the metropolis and all that? We're like, oh no, not at all. We're super happy to come visit, because our company creates these quarterly meetings, and then of course we have team meetings even more often than that. So we're constantly going back and forth. But we love having our base in the south of France, and we can still come back to the big city and sort of feel like we're visitors rather than people who live there permanently. And it's really changed their quality of life, and it hasn't changed at all how they work. And I was just thinking of that, coming back, because when I was in my 20s, you know, I only thought of the office and the workplace as a physical place, and it was just completely natural to me. And I was quite happy to be going to an office. It didn't even occur to me that I could be working in my small space, at home. It didn't make sense to me. But now people are thinking a lot more differently than they used to, and it's not such a leap. And so I think that one of the trends that I'm seeing, and I don't want to extrapolate from just one anecdote. I'm telling this anecdote because it is representative of a much larger trend that's happening, which is that, young people in their 20s, 30s, entering the workforce, are expecting that they'll at least have a choice, and this sort of dovetails a little bit with one of our older episodes, with Gianna Biscontini and what she's doing at Workwell, and what they've found out about hybrid work as well. But I wonder how that lands for you, and if that makes sense to you, that there's, this larger trend of, how do I make my employees happy? And part of that is, to give the choice of where to work, because that's where people seem to be going.
But your counterpoint about what the couple was doing and then what you were doing in your 20s, whereas you had to go to the office given the work you were doing and the whole culture, that it's about identity
Mm,
and how you see yourself in relationship to the organization. So there has to be a strength of character about interfacing in these rectangles or by phone calls, et cetera, to say, I exist, my work is value, how I negotiate those little rectangles and communications, as opposed to it was always a really big thing, walk past your boss's office, say, hi, I'm working.
right.
It's a presence, so whatever interface you had, that fed your work
Mm,
identity and brought some value in those situations, as foolish as it sounds sometimes, but it really did shore up what we were supposed to be there in the office. So I think it is really about what is important and where does it make the big difference and how does it bring value to your work. And I think that is a little bit of the tension we're seeing in the hybrid work areas. We went from nobody can work from home of many years ago to then we sent everybody home because we had no choice. So it's that ebb and flow of where the value is in the working relationship and what's going to make the most sense.
mm.
And also engage people. But I still believe we still have to come together, and that's something we have to make worthwhile. and not just because it's a check mark that you have to show up like mandatory existence once in a while. Make it happen, make it worthwhile in the situation for that person, so they make the best use of their time.
Agreed. And that was the big caveat to their story, was that it was really important for them to meet in person with their team on a regular basis. Those quarterly meetings, those even monthly meetings for one of them in their team, but the quarterly meetings, the company wide, that was super important. And that's what I'm seeing also in our business with our clients, is that, we've got more and more clients now that are saying we've got to build in these, retreats and time for team building, and where we all come together, because people really appreciate that a lot more after having been isolated at home. And so even if they still want to work at home because it offers a lot of flexibility and certainly cuts down on commute and costs, et cetera, they still want to come to the office, consistently, to be able to feel that relationship with others, and just the connection to the culture of the organization as well. So that's definitely something that's not going away. Yeah.
Well, because speaking of connections, the holidays have a point and counterpoint in a true New York fashion. So I had people over the house, and I did more socializing than I had in the last 3 years. And it was wonderful because you have small moments. You gather, you talk, you can have a conversation for a few minutes, come back, run, get the doorbell, come back, and still continue. So those are the things that are fun about in person. But I did have a very typically New York moment over the holidays when I was going to meet friends for dinner, and I went through the vortex of hell, which is Times Square, 34th Street, and I had a thought I haven't had in 3 years. Oh, the tourists. And then I stopped myself on this chair and went, wait a minute, you haven't complained about tourists in years. This is a good thing. There's tourists. They're coming to spend money. They're all over the place. They're not watching where they're going. But I said, how you are nostalgic for this. So I think it's about repurposing what we think is a challenge sometimes. So that was a really New York moment. I actually can picture the street corner I was on going, wait up, hold up. This is a luxury we didn't think we were going to get back, for a while. But actually, we do have to sort out the whole tourism thing.
Right, exactly. Now, and that reminds me of something that someone told me recently. It's and I'm sort of keeping as a motto: we're human beings, not human doings. And as part of what human beings, just live through, and how we exist, is we live for relationships. We're social creatures, and so that, that's when you notice, and certainly I've noticed that this holiday season is just the craving that we all have for that human connection, and just being able to be in person with others. And so I think that's maybe the takeaway today, is just that's the biggest trend, is pay attention to the human beings. The doing is great. We can figure out all the ways that we can be more effective and more efficient, et cetera, which systems to use. But let's pay attention to how we're being. Are we being isolated? Are we isolating ourselves from others? Or are we connecting with others? And what are we doing in order to connect and engage with others? And a lot of that has to do with finding ways to communicate with others in person, and to relate to others in person. And don't want to encourage people to take risks or anything that are unwarranted, because I know there's a triple-demic going on. So certainly we don't want to ignore that. But what are the things that we can do safely? And thankfully, I think we can do more and more in a safer and safer way. So yeah.
And your point about it's small moments too. It's you come together, and gives you a chance to pay attention and create some small moments of connection and listening, and finding out how people are in perspective, and learning, and having some informed information you can share in a different way when you're face to face. And I think the bigger the message, the more stress there is, it's more of an opportunity to do it live if you can, and gather around for a few minutes. Doesn't have to be an hour-long meeting. A few minutes at times makes a difference. You and I have been through big transitions and big announcements where that one-to-one or small group environment made all the difference in engaging people and supporting them and showing them how things will work successfully going forward.
Great. I think that's a great send-off for this episode. And I want to encourage everyone to go check out bestofhr.com, Top HR Trends. That's the name of the article. And we'll make sure to link it into the show notes. So make sure to read those. And as always, we are from Narrative, and you can visit our website, narrative.com, NARATIV.com, to find these podcast episodes, as well as a very rich and informed blog where we have lots of different posts about all these topics that we talk about in the podcast and many more. And also you can find out how you and your team can work with us to find, craft, and tell the stories that really matter at the moment. What is that story that's going to help you navigate these uncertain seas through 2023 and beyond? We're here to listen, and we're ready to listen. So as always, thank you so much for listening. Thanks, Jules, for being here today and for that article.
New York tourists.
Yes. Thank you, New York tourists.
With a whole new light this year. Cheers.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks so much. All right. We'll see you next time.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.